on where you are. My name is Matthew Stibber, and I am going to run through my webinar that I've prepared about conversion rate optimization, and I'm going to talk about 10 CRO experiments that you can run on your website relatively briskly. I mean, I would say perhaps if we were doing any of the experiments we're discussing here, it might be a few hours to a half day to implement them on some level. Some of them maybe need a little bit more content support. So thank you for joining. Without further ado, I will get started, and we'll cover all of this in half an hour. So first of all, where am I coming from? Well, I'm the founder and CEO at Articulate Marketing, and over 25 years we've helped more than 180 companies build their marketing difference engine using branding, websites, content and automation. So we've done more than 100 websites. We've spent a lot of time thinking about this for big companies like Microsoft and Google and smaller companies. So that's my background and context. These are the things that we enable companies to do. There isn't a live chat on this for various reasons, partly because I'm doing these webinars without producer support, so it's hard enough to kind of concentrate and keep time and say something interesting. But if you would like to drop an email, I'd be delighted to hear from you. If you want to book up a call, a meeting with me, I'd be delighted to give you half an hour of my time, no charge, no BS. I can prepare some thoughts about your website and conversion rate optimization and just try and help. So I very much welcome that communication. If you're seeing this or watching the recorded video afterwards, please get in touch. There are, last plug I promise, and we'll get right to the CRO, upcoming webinars over the next few weeks and months. We've got a full program up to Christmas. Next week I'm looking at the future of B2B tech websites, and this report and webinar is drawn from the expertise within the agency. Many of my colleagues contributed, and we're looking at a lot of the trends that are driving website design and utilization at the moment. So this will be a very interesting webinar. But there are more. If you go to articulatemarketing.com/webinars, you can see the whole library and all the pre-recorded ones. We're now on, I think this is webinar 83. We've got another 6 or 7 before Christmas, so do check that out. Right, why is CRO important? Let's start with a definition of conversion rate optimization. It's really about getting more leads and engagement and insight from the website you've already got and the visitors you're already getting. Now, there's lots of things we can do to get more visitors, and there's lots of things we can do to make your website better, but how do you get more of them converting and doing the thing that you want them to do, whether it's booking a demo, filling in a form so they can enroll in your CRM, signing up for newsletters, whatever it is that takes them the next step in their buyer's journey. So there are an interesting way to think about this, actually, is in our experience, in our world, we deal with B2B tech companies, and we see hundreds and hundreds of websites. We look at not only the websites we build, but clients where we don't build websites but provide other services. And we've been looking at this for a long time. And websites that just have a bog standard contact us form tend not to even convert 1 in 1,000 visitors. So let's say they have 10,000 visitors a month. They might get 10 form submissions a month, and that's not great. A website that is really well optimized for conversions has lots of really good high quality offers. Offers meaning things that visitors value and are willing to exchange their information for. You can see conversion rates as high as 4% on B2B websites. So that's 4 in 100 visitors. So on that hypothetical website that gets 10,000 visitors a month, that could mean 400 leads a month coming in. So even with the same number of visitors, there's obviously a huge difference from a business perspective between having 10 people and 400 people building a relationship with you. So conversion rate optimization has a role to play in making that happen. I want to share a real world case study. This is a client that we've been working with for 3 or 4 years now, SearchPilot. They do experimental search engine optimization for e-commerce firms and do a brilliant job with that. we spent last year about 6-7 months doing a conversion rate optimization project. We with things like, can you beat an AI quiz, with improvements to the demo request flow, an improved contact us page that used a self-booking calendar rather than a form, and probably it was 8 or 9 different interventions over the time period. We were able to drive 400 incremental leads over 6 months. So these are leads we didn't think they would have got on the old system, and we had a benchmark to sort of establish that baseline to establish that. We also were able to get a significant, more than doubling increase in the number of people who are signing up for their newsletter. And newsletters are great. I think they're the underutilized form of marketing. And for Searchpilot, they share experiment results with people. So it's a really important part of their funnel. So it was a big improvement for them. So these are the kinds of results you can achieve. When we do a project with a client, we have a methodology that we use. We do an audit, we get some baselines in place, we brainstorm and form some testable hypotheses. This screenshot is from our Notion template database that we use for CRO projects. So this isn't a real actual implemented thing, but it shows the kinds of things that we're wanting to build when we do our experiment database. And then we iteratively implement and test those things with A/B testing, with cohort testing, and various other things. Monitor the results and pick winners. So it's essential with CRO to take an experimental approach. You never really know in advance what's going to work for a particular website, a particular audience, and a particular set of client goals. So something that might work well, might be best practice for one company, might not be for another. So yeah, sure, there's a toolkit of 20 or so things that we would go to as a starting point, but each of those things has to be sort of selected and honed and crafted and tested for each client. It's also quite helpful to apply the PI scoring method. So P for potential, what's the likely benefit? I for importance, is it on a key page that's going to get a lot of traffic? And E for ease, how easy is it and how simple is it to test and how easy is it to implement? So PIE is quite a useful acronym for these kinds of, where you're running a portfolio of experiments. So let's look at 10 experiments you could run. And what I have done, because they were kind enough to sign up for another webinar I'm running when I was preparing this, they're not a client, I just like their site. So I'm going to use ZeroAvia as an example of some initial experiment design that I would be thinking about proposing. Now obviously I'm doing this unilaterally, I haven't talked to them, I don't know what their goals are. I've assumed they've got certain audiences and certain outcomes that they want, sort of about clarity of value proposition, lead form optimization, credibility signaling, visitor segmentation, and they probably want more people to fill in the contact form, they want more newsletter signups, they want more media coverage. So I'm assuming those sorts of things. If we were doing this for a client, we'd actually pay quite a lot of attention to that and engage with the client to do it. I really like ZeroAvia for reasons that I'm going to show you in the next slide, but also they do hydrogen power, hydrogen economy stuff, so they're building planes that are powered by liquid hydrogen. Amazing. And we're kind of interested in that. We have another client that a company called Michelmersh that invented a method of firing bricks with hydrogen. And we have another client, Trimtech, who makes valves for the hydrogen economy and also for the space industry. So, it's a topic of interest. And I'm a pilot, or I used to be. I don't fly anymore. I'm medically grounded. But so this is almost 11 years ago, flying in 7 Lima Delta, Cirrus, out to Kemble, where ZeroAvia are based, just down the road from me here, but back then I was in London. And this was the first time I took the woman who is now my wife flying. She was very brave, and we flew down to Kemble and had lunch and flew back. So I have very happy memories of Kemble and flying. Okay, so as a little personal note. So the first thing I would be doing with ZeroAvia if I was advising them is I'd be thinking about value proposition clarity. So that homepage banner is probably the most valuable real estate on the website, and I would be testing different language to see if it drove longer dwell times, deeper scrolls on the page. I'd be testing the CTA buttons there to see whether different CTAs had more click-throughs, a different language. And also in their case, I'd be looking at proposition clarity in a visual sense, because they've got white text on an animated video backdrop. And as you can see in this screenshot, in some video segments, it's white text on an almost white background. It's very hard to read. So I'd be testing all of that, maybe testing different designs of the banner with maybe video showing on the right and text on the left, or putting some tints in or something. So there's lots of things you can do. You don't always have to do A/B testing, which is where you serve two versions on a random basis to your audience, and you see which group of people do more of the thing you want them to do. That's probably the gold standard for CRO, but you need quite a lot of data to produce statistically valid outcomes from that. On a typical homepage that might get thousands of visits a month, you can usually run pretty robust CRO experiments. On pages like demo or contact pages that might get hundreds of visits, you might want to be thinking about cohort testing or other kinds of things. I'm just going to change the camera here because it's sort of following me around a bit. It's making me a little bit seasick. There we go. Years ago, I did quite a lot of copywriting for some quite big companies, and I was doing some writing for HSBC. And I was talking to the guy who was involved in managing their website, and he told me that they could do an A/B test to decide whether this shade of blue produced more conversions than this shade of blue on the homepage, and they could run that test in an afternoon because they got so many visits. Well, that's a nice problem to have for A/B testing. Second thing I would be doing, if you scroll on ZeroAvia down to the bottom of the page, there's a HubSpot form there that you fill in to contact them. Great. Okay, so they've moved the contact form off the contact page and onto the home page. That's an interesting question, and maybe worth experimenting with whether you'd want to have a CTA and send them somewhere. But there are a lot of fields on this form, and there is a hypothesis, well actually it's pretty well attested by the data, that the more fields you have, the fewer conversions you get. So I would be asking for a work email address and trying to nudge people into that, or I would switch off using webmail addresses altogether. So I'd block them. And if you get a work email address, you can go use data enrichment tools, and HubSpot has a lot of this stuff now, to work out, how big is the company, where are they based, what's the job title of the person filling in the form, and if they're interesting, you could just phone them up or send them an email going, oh great, or you go look them up on LinkedIn, right? So that you could get rid of 4 or 5 of those fields and still have that information. You can also get the region and country from the IP address of the visitor, and HubSpot captures that, and you can determine that without asking. Also, do you need a capture form on there? I don't think so in almost all cases. If you come under attack and you need it, you can switch it on, but frankly, no, most websites don't need that, but it adds another layer of delay and bother for visitors. And I'd do a little bit of a legal review about that GDPR stuff, because anytime you have a checkbox that you have to click, people miss it and they don't understand why they can't submit the form, or they think they've submitted it. So it adds friction. You need it in some countries and some territories, and for some very sort of pious data protection managers, and I'm not giving legal advice, but from a sort of form submission perspective, having a little checkbox, I agree, slows everything down. So I'd be looking at form optimization. The third thing I would be looking at is CTA clarity. So as you scroll on that homepage, they've got these sort of areas of work. So how you get fuel to H2 powered aircraft and components and powertrains, fantastic. But the buttons are discover more, explore more, show more. Setting aside the accessibility and SEO implications of those nondescript button texts, and there are implications, I would be testing different language there to see if I could get more clicks. I'd try and use a little bit more muscular language, a bit more descriptive language. I'd put some more verbs in there. See hydrogen in action, or explore hydrogen powertrains, or something like that. So audience-specific paths. So obviously, almost every website actually has different kinds of audiences, whether it's investors, potential employees, recruitment, whether it's different customers or different customers for different kinds of services. Our most complicated client yet in that regard was a company called Causeway, and I've got a little screenshot of part of their menu nav here. They've got dozens of products, and they had something in the order of sort of 9 or 10 different audience personas. So they had to architect the site in a way that depending on who you were, you could find what you were looking for and you could identify. It's a mistake, I think, to think every website is basically only trying to talk to one type of person. So really understanding your personas and then giving them navigation routes or on-page buttons that get them to what they want. So I'd be thinking about changing the nav here, and I'd be thinking about on the page having something that looks like, I am this and I'm looking for this, so that it's really quick. A long time ago, like 2001, I think, I went to Google. I was writing an article at that time as a freelance journalist. I was writing an article for Director magazine, and I went to interview Sergey Brin. Fantastic. So off I went and met him. And then afterwards, I was having lunch with another couple of people from the company, and over lunch, they told me that the mission at that time for Google was to get you off Google onto the exact right page for your search as quickly as possible. And in many ways, it's a similar thing with a website. What you're trying to do is get people to the right thing on your website as quickly as possible, making it as easy as possible for them to get there. Okay. This is something that we are relearning at Articulate. We published a lot of blogs recently that didn't have calls to action embedded in the text, and we are now in the process of adding them all back. So I would go through the top traffic blog posts, news articles, and I'd be adding calls to action in there to either contact page or to gated offers or to something. And then I'd be tracking the click-throughs on that. If these days you are getting a lot of one-page traffic or zero-click traffic, and people are just coming because they've found that particular thing on a large language model or that thing on Google, you kind of want to make the most of that visit. If they come to the site and they're just going to look at that page, that one click, having a CTA might turn that into a 2-page visit, or it might turn that into a lead. So make the most of where the traffic is. Next thing I would be exploring is very counterintuitive, this. Normally you think a form, fill in the form and get this piece of content, this report, this white paper, this webinar. And the thing that you get, you don't get it until you fill in the form. It's like a surprise almost. It might be good and it might not be good. But what we found was that if we had like a long article on the blog, and we put in a form at the top that said, if you would like to read this article in it, you can read the whole thing on the screen. We're not gating it in any way, but if you'd like to download this as a PDF, fill in this form and we'll send that to you. This converts really well if you've got good content. And the value proposition here for the visitor is not there's some mystery offer behind the form that you might like. The value proposition is, I'm going to give you the content you can already see. You know what you're getting, but I'm going to give it to you in a format that is convenient to you. You can read offline, you can print, you can share. So I would do this, and you don't have to be fancy pants about the PDF design. You can just put it into a Word document and then export it as a PDF, something like that, whatever's going to work to get that PDF, and see if people will read it and download it. Okay. Next thing. ZeroAvia has a newsletter, so if you're looking at on the website page, it says stay updated on our progress. All right. And when you click on that, you get another one of these monster forms with capture and legal and multiple fields that you have to fill in. So I would be doing a couple of things. First of all, I would be testing using the existing POP CTA as a control. I'd be testing a new CTA that told you a little bit more about what you'd get and why it's going to be useful. So it might be, get career enhancing information about marketing for us. It might be get the latest news about the zero carbon aviation world, stay updated, something like that. I'm just like weekly emails about unsubscribe anytime. I'd just make it a little bit richer, a little bit more visual. And then I'd send them to the sign up page, and I would be asking first name, email address. I wouldn't ask for anything else. Make it really easy to subscribe. But what I would be showing on that landing page is, this is what you're going to get, these are the kinds of topics we cover, this is how frequently we're going to send it. I'd put some social proof in there, some quotes if you've got them from people who are reading it. I'd say if you've got a good number of subscribers, I'd say, you know, join the 40,000 people who've already subscribed, something like that. And I'd be testing that landing page against the control, which in Zero Avia's case is just the form on the page. So really unappetizing. My guess, and if Zero Avia ever watch this, I'd love to talk to you about it. I'll come down to Kemble, I'll buy you lunch in that nice cafe there. My guess is they get a handful, if any, newsletter subscriptions every month. And the potential is, you know, pretty meaningful chunk of their visitors should be signing up for the newsletter. I did a webinar a few weeks ago about how to write newsletters that people want to read. So, you know, that I can talk about that on another occasion, or you can go watch that webinar. Right. AI chat is the next thing I would be exploring. So we did quite a lot of experimentation with this, and basically what you can do with HubSpot, and it looks like Zero Avia has HubSpot in the background of their website, is you can upload your company knowledge, your website content, product literature, whatever you want, support information, into an interface inside HubSpot. It's really easy, it's drag and drop, you don't have to know anything about programming. It's already got a chatbot functionality in HubSpot, so what it does is it puts a little AI, like a chat GPT type of AI, into the chatbot and using and trained on the data you give it. And there's some pretty good guidelines and handover rules about when it stops answering from AI and says, you know, I'll hand you over to a human being, either fill in this form and we'll be in touch, or live chat. So if you've got somebody who's on standby to talk to people, you can actually have the AI hand over to a live chat. So this is another way of capturing and engaging people. And I would be testing whether that's actually going to work, whether people use it, what kind of questions they ask. HubSpot makes this functionality available for free, but they charge each time somebody has a conversation with it. And they charge, if memory serves, 100 HubSpot credits for each conversation. So it sounds like you're going to get nickel and dime to pay for this, but most HubSpot clients have 5,000 or more HubSpot credits a month as part of their plan. HubSpot just gives them to you, and almost all our clients at the moment aren't using those credits. So you could have 50 AI-powered, knowledge-enriched conversations on your website that you're not having right now. You can make it really convenient for your visitors, and you wouldn't have to pay anything for that. So and I reckon this could be set up and tested in a couple of hours. You could run it for a few weeks or until the credits run out. So that. Penultimate recommendation. I can't take credit for this pop-up with Will Critchlow. It's using standard HubSpot pop-up CTA functionality, but they did it, we didn't, and we built the rest of the website and so on, but they just run these campaigns themselves. But that kind of, you know, in your face, fill in this form, sign up for this webinar. You know, we're very sort of modest, humble. We put this little hello bar, we've got a new webinar coming, you know, and Searchpilot are like, sign up here, this is what you're going to get. So maybe we need to take a leaf out of their book at Articulate. And if I was Zero Avia, I probably wouldn't do it as quite a hard sell, but I would probably have a pop-up that said, sign up for our newsletter and we're going to give you this and it's going to be amazing. Or you know, if they had a test flight after the test flight and you interviewed the pilot or the engineers who are designing the engine, and you just did this little video, watch the latest video, sign up here. There's lots of things that they could do without having a huge amount of original content that people would be very interested in, and a pop-up is a very easy way of testing that. You can test different pop-ups against each other and things like that. So I would be doing that. The last thing is I did a webinar a few weeks ago about widening the mid-funnel, and I think this is increasingly important for in an age of zero-click and LLM models where people are coming less and less for that top of funnel SEO content and more for the deep knowledge and expertise. You get fewer visitors, but they're perhaps a bit more engaged, and you need to provide content at the middle funnel that's sort of addressing a little bit more of their deeper needs. So on Articulate, we've been publishing these what we call flagship reports. So, top 300 sustainability websites, top 100 health tech influencers, that sort of thing, as well as the webinars. And if you're watching this, thank you. So if I was ZeroAvia, I would be thinking about, well, what can I offer that would be relevant? And I'd be thinking maybe I put a landing page on the media kit, media images, so that I would capture journalist interest. I might be thinking about a registration required investors area, just register with this and then you can get access to all of our latest industry reports, market reports, zero carbon insights and so on, performance of the business, whatever. I did a report that's up on our blog about how to build a world-class investors area for your website. Similarly, we did a report on employer branding on websites and recruitment sites. So you might have a sign up for job posting alerts, which would be a really nice way of building a library of potential candidates, so that when you did have a job, you could send them an email and go, hey, you signed up and we're telling you we've just launched this. And gated flagship reports, so the Zero Carbon Aviation Report 2026, that sort of thing. Plenty of opportunity for that, and lots of people might be very interested in it, especially with ZeroAvia's thought leadership and expertise in that field. So that is what I would be doing if I was having or what I'd be initially thinking about if I was having a conversation with ZeroAvia. If you'd like me to have that sort of thought process about your website, delighted. You can book up a call with me, email me, Matthew@Articulate Marketing, or go to articulatemarketing.com/meet. That's my online calendar. You can book it up directly. Don't forget about our future upcoming webinars. That is the end. I've actually managed to finish a couple of minutes early, which is great on a Thursday evening. Thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic evening.